Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live episode of To the Moon, Allison, where we talk about the top and trending works in fantasy, science fiction, speculative fiction, and romance. I'm your host, author Allison Martine Hubbard, author of the contemporary romance series The Bourbon Books and works of speculative fiction. I am so pleased to be joined today by my friend and fellow author, Sara R. Cleveland. Welcome, Sara.
Hi.
Hi, Sara. Sara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the books Penelope's Dragon and the Woodland Curses series?
Okay. Well, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, so I've heard all the jokes.
Are there specific Cleveland jokes or just Ohio in general?
Well, mostly when I go to buy an adult beverage, I get to hear about my name and the city that I happen to be in simultaneously.
They're like, hey, Cleveland, is this your city? Are you related to the ancestors of this city? Is that your real name? And the answer is, just give me my beer.
Ironically, the guy who founded Cleveland, actually his name wasn't spelled the way the city is spelled.
Nope.
There's another A in it.
Is it cleave as into cleave?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, well, that would make sense. And then people can't spell, so they just lose the A. We didn't need that one anyway. It's fine. It's good. It's good.
And I write fantasy romance. My first book was Saving the Dragon, which is the first book of my Penelope's Dragon series. And my new series is The Woodland Curses, which starts off with Bared Magic. And it's a Goldilocks-inspired fairy tale romance.
Well, and I was going to say, I feel kind of Goldilocks, and I feel a little bit Little Red here wearing my opera cape. And part of that is just because there was this discussion about people should just wear blankets, and why did the cape ever go out of fashion? And I have two opera capes. One I wear on my chair to cover the boring computer chair, and this is the other one. So I'm like, I'm putting it on because I'm cold. But I also felt like, ooh, this is kind of like Little Red wearing her hood and her woodland garb because it's cold in the woods and you probably need 18 layers and then your little basket of treats. I don't have a basket of treats today, which is too bad.
I actually bought a wool cape cloak
thing.
Is
it red?
It is not, as brown, but it is the best purchase I have ever made. I love it so much. I don't know why we ever went to winter coats, because capes are just awesome.
Better. And I completely agree. And this is actually my favorite purchase because last year, regrettably, my husband was like, we should just buy our own things. You buy what you want. And I'm like, I did not agree to that this year because I thought that was terrible. But I was looking for a sweater, and in the sweaters at, I think it was either Marshall's or Ross, was this thing. And I'm going, it's an opera cape and it's $19.99. I already have an opera cape. I don't need two opera capes. I'm buying it anyway. Merry Christmas to me. So I totally get you on the best purchases. But I wanted to point out, I think it's kind of funny because I'm usually a stickler for reading things in order. And you are, I think, the first author where I've read everything in completely the wrong order, because the first thing I read from you is actually a book that isn't out yet, is the one that you're working on now. I read the first segment of that. Then I went back and read the entire book that precedes it. And then most recently, I've read Penelope's Dragon, which is the first, or Saving the Dragon, which is first in the Penelope's Dragon series. So my brain is completely backwards in terms of how you've written these things. I don't even know where the Saving the Dragon series goes beyond the first one with Penelope's Dragon, although apparently she gets a dragon because the whole series is named after her. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about first that one and what inspired that, and then we'll move into the fairy tale side and our cloaks and everything like that. While Jack is going to wave at us. We can wave back to Jack. Hi, Jack. Jack Ori says hi. So tell us a little bit about where you got the ideas from in order to do Saving the Dragon and Penelope's Dragon series, because there's so many ways to handle dragons. And we are both in an indie author, indie reading club. And we just read a book with dragons in it. And the dragons were very different than how your dragons were. And I was not a big fan of the dragons in this last book. And you and I had some words about the dragons. And you did not assure me that your dragons would be different. But I'm like, I'm sure yours were different. And yours were totally different. So I wanted to know about not just the inspiration for the book in general, but your inspiration for the dragon lore that you use in Saving the Dragon for Penelope.
So the characters... with the exception of Eric and Tiffany, and I'll explain why in a second, most of the characters in Saving the Dragon were originally NPCs that I created for a tabletop RPG campaign.
Nice.
And the players were going to, and there's some characters even in the second book that were NPCs for the series or for the campaign. And Tiffany and Eric, their little side adventure, those side characters, they're actually playing the part that the player characters would have in the campaign. But as I was writing the campaign backstory, I was like, you know what? I really, really, really like these NPCs. I don't want to let players muck this up. I'm just going to go write a book.
I need to control this. I need to move exactly where I need them to go. And I think that's funny. My husband is a DM. He goes, and I know he's like, he gets all into the way he does all this, but he has no control ultimately over what the players are going to do. So I love the idea that you're like, I really like this, and I can't let them muck them up because they need to go in these directions. So I'm going to just pull them back from the game and give them their own little story of here.
So one of the first things that I had to do was remove all of the game mechanics from my NPCs. And so all the things that I took out, I was like, okay, well, how do I backfill this? Yeah. And so some of that history plays into why the lore of the series is the way it is, because the one thing I did not want to do was plagiarize D&D.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot going on with that. And my husband has this thing where he doesn't always start a story in the place where it logically makes sense. He just picks it up where it is in his head. So he doesn't always do that transition phrase. So it doesn't make sense to me. And he said, oh, there's a big problem with D&D. And I thought he meant his group that plays on Wednesday nights. And he was actually talking about some of the changes with everything going on as far as what they're going to be allowing people to do and whether or not they're going to be allowing people to make their own games and all this stuff. And I only followed about a third of it because once I was like, wait, this doesn't impact you directly. Your game is not falling apart. Okay, I stopped caring. But I did get enough to understand that because, as people may or may not know, it's owned by another company and it's changed over the years from back then, Gary Gygax first created all of it, and then how much that can be owned by other people. But as you just demonstrated, there are creators all over the world who have put their own spin on it. But obviously, if it's directly pulling from something created by another world, you can't be like, and then I took that works and they went over here and then they rolled for initiative, because you can't do that in a book. I mean, I guess you probably could, but wrong kind of book.
There's a whole genre of books that are either directly you're in a role-playing game, mm-hmm. or you're in a video game, lit RPG. There's entire books that are in fact about people playing tabletop RPGs.
And it's not just Stranger Things. That's just the one that has probably the most merch currently.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was kind of distance myself from that as much as possible, while still keeping the core of my characters, because the core of my characters, that was all me, not the game system that I was using. So, but that's where Penelope's Dragon came from.
And Jennifer and Gordon says, hello, Jennifer.
Hello.
And I was going to say, because the Eric and Tiffany names, I was going to say, are those inspired by anything? Because for me, I got a very strong Terry Pratchett vibe off of those two names, but that may not be the case.
I have never read a Terry Pratchett book.
When you're done, I'm going to go mail you some. You need to go start on that right away.
I do have one of Terry Pratchett's books on my giant spreadsheet of books to read this year.
Your TBR is kind of scary though, Sarah. So I don't know if it's ever going to show up this decade, this century.
No. I can tell you, I'm going to read.
Where is it on the spreadsheet?
Terry Pratchett, The Color of Magic, in June.
All right, I will. I don't want to completely go off track here by saying that The Color of Magic, while the beginning of the series is not the place to start, it's not where I started. It's one of those things where the books, I think get a lot stronger as they go on. And I don't know many people who actually liked the color of magic. And if you start there, you may be like, this isn't for me. There are other places to start. We can have that talk later. I would never tell anybody not to read a Terry Pratchett book. I would just say that's maybe not the best place to start, and maybe one that wouldn't give the best sense of where it is. And there's certain standalones like Small Gods and Feet of Clay, sort of a standalone, that are maybe a better entry point. But that's later. Pratchett nerd. That's fine. Totally fine. And I'm not a D&D nerd, even though I watched the cartoon growing up. So I'm a D&D cartoon nerd, if that's even a thing, as a child, where I thought I'd ride the ride and then go into the D&D land with that's just me, child of the 80s. That's fine. But I like knowing that, because nothing about reading Saving the Dragon would have made me think it was related to any of those games. It just felt like this is a world where dragons actually do exist, and at least on the surface, what's more known is magic, and that there are academies of magic and things like that. So it had a very fantasy world feel, but other than that, was very grounded in terms of, I didn't feel like everybody running around had magical powers and everything was overpowered. And sometimes that takes me out of fantasy worlds because it's unrelatable. One of the things I liked about your magic system is you made explanations about things about, okay, well, where is this? We need some kind of grounding object, or how we're going to make this, and we're going to be able to make this work, but we need something in order to complete this, and that magic doesn't always work, and of course with really bad consequences. So I don't know if that comes back to the D&D background, or if that's just something because you like game systems. Where does that come from, Sarah?
So I read an article by an author that I really respect many, many years ago. And her name is Holly Lyle, and she has a whole ton of writing advice. I think she teaches writing courses now. And the article was talking about how a good magic system has to have consequences. There has to be a take for the give, and also you only really get like one gimme in your book, and if your gimme is magic, then everything else has to be very grounded, because you can't ask the reader to like suspend belief over too many things, or you're going to lose them. And that was something that I very much took to heart when I read that, is that magic has to have rules. I did regret some of my rules when I got
I wrote myself into this
series. I spent a lot of time in book 2, and I'm spending a lot of time now in book 3, making sure I know what my rules are, because if there's one thing that readers are very good at, it's noticing when you screwed up.
In episode 37, we all know Comic Book Nerd from Simpsons, because we're always waiting for that comic book nerd to call us out and say, do you know that you said this, and then you made it over here, and it didn't line up? Because I think they sometimes forget that we're just people too, and sometimes we make mistakes. It happens. It does.
And I don't have a world Bible for that particular world. All of my original notes from back in the day are gone somewhere. I wrote Saving the Dragon 8 years ago now. So all the original world building is just gone. I have no idea where it is.
In the world pre-COVID, nothing exists. The world's just gone. It's gone.
So, my version of continuity checks is going, I think I wrote something about that in the first book, and then doing a word search on the old manuscript.
Sometimes that's the best thing you can do. And then if you didn't use quite the right word, you have got to like, okay, I'm still not finding it. Let me try this word. Oh, did I try that? Okay, 17 different ways. I know for me that the dumbest stuff that gets me caught up in that are things like what cars, because I mean, at least for what I've had to do multiple in series, has been contemporary romance. And I've had to be like, what car did I have people driving? So I actually have both a name list, so I don't double name people, because I've done that. And also what car each person drives, because cars mean nothing to me. So I had certain characters driving a Tacoma, a Tundra, and a Tahoe. That same character drives all those cars. They're the same car to me, so I don't know any different. I'm like, I probably should kind of keep it one, so they don't think this person's just cycling through cars like other people change their socks. So you need to do that sometimes.
Side character eye color is the thing that gets me.
Eye color. They're like heterochromia, so it's everything depending which way they're looking at you. Maybe not. Probably not. And Jennifer says she is a D&D nerd, but she prefers to play in the Lord of the Rings universe. Well, Jennifer, that's because we're hobbits and we want to just go where there's second breakfast. That's fair. I would play D&D if they feed me. That's fine. But so you have that. So you want to make sure that you don't have any kind of giveaways where the people are going, all right, you had one gimme and now you want me to have 17 gimmies. You need to do that. I know for me, I love reading fantasy and science fiction, and I can suspend disbelief so long as the characters all act like humans and have human motivations. And you nailed that perfectly, including disobedient children who don't really like rules of parents, overprotective parents who are like, but I want the best for my children, so maybe I might interfere with some things here and there. And also people bent on revenge. But we'll leave Melinda out of this for now. Okay, I have a character named Melinda. You have a character named Melinda. I'm reading a book right now with a Melinda, and I'm just wondering what we all have in just the world attached to that name that makes Melinda's kind of questionable as humans. What Melinda hurt us all collectively? Because I'm kind of wondering what that is about the name. We're like, Melinda.
I don't think I've ever known a Melinda, to be honest.
I see, and I did, and I'm going, I don't remember not liking her. Why did I do this? So, because Melinda is, I don't want to give away too much, but she is a formative character in the first book who gets involved with the dragon and the Penelope and the stuff.
I think like the thing about Melinda in that book is she is very much she's a villain. There's not, I mean, she has a little bit of tragic backstory, but there's not, like, she's mostly just a villain who's there to be a villain. But that said, she's probably the most fun I've ever had writing a character. She was just fun to write. And
well, look, no, I was going to say writing villains and writing characters, even if they aren't necessarily villains, but that are a bit much, because I wouldn't say my Melinda is a villain. She's just a bit much, and is in the second book of my series. She's definitely a frenemy, and she goes through some growth on her own and has her own book. And I just put it out there. Hey, the third book is called Move On Melinda. So if you've got a problem with Melinda, you just know going in, you're dealing with her. But Jennifer, maybe this explains it. Her first grade teacher was Sister Melinda. So it was a scary nun that hurt you. So collectively, that may be where our conscience got hurt by a scary Sister Melinda. That wouldn't explain it for those of us who didn't go to Catholic school. But still, maybe it's just out there in the universe that we should beware. You didn't go to Catholic school, probably, Sarah. So no, that doesn't explain it. But it is fun to write those kind of villains. And then in your newer series with the Baird magic and moving on, you don't have any mean nuns in that either, do you? No, okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those and what the inspiration for those? Because while it's still fantasy, it's decidedly more, as you say, like fairy tale with my little Red Riding Hood, little red paisley girl.
There's a story behind Baird Magic, because Baird Magic is the book I did not intend to write. I was supposed to be working on Finding the Dragon, which is the conclusion to the Penelope's Dragon series.
Would that be a book 4 or 3?
3.
3, okay.
Book 3. And I was supposed to be working on that, but so I like to hang out in some Facebook groups that are for pre-made covers, and there was this cover that I did not purchase, but it was very obviously for an adult, spicy, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, reverse harem. What are we calling this now? Why choose?
I didn't know they were called. I've heard reverse harem. I have not heard why choose. It's like why choose between the different bears. Are the bears people in this or no?
Yeah, I don't want to know. It was supposed to be like a shifter thing.
Okay.
And I saw this cover, and I do not write Why Choose Romance.
I mean, not that I've read yet, but I don't know what else you're doing.
I can't say I will never, but as of now, I don't write Why Choose Romance. I do write shifters, but I saw this and I had this thought.
Jennifer's just like, furries. We're not talking about furries. We said shifters. Shifters, Jennifer. That's when they are a human and then they become a creature. And usually any kind of adult interaction is done while they are in human form. If it's a shifter that is not a mammal, would it be a scaly? Don't answer that. We're moving on. Okay.
So,
the cover, and it was clearly spicy.
But I got this thought in my head, and that thought was, what if Baby Bear had insomnia?
What if Baby Bear had insomnia? How did that cover come from the spicy romance? Do you just assume all characters have insomnia? I have insomnia, but we don't write about that usually.
It went more like, okay, so why did Goldilocks fall asleep in Baby Bear's bed? And then it was
now I remember the book. Okay, go on.
And then I was like, okay, well, what if there was a charm or a spell or something that made her fall asleep? Well, why is there a charm or a spell on Baby Bear's bed? Well, what if Baby Bear has insomnia? And then I had to write the book to figure out why Baby Bear had insomnia. And I wrote
just all the backstory. It's like, why does Sarah write books? Because she saw something she shouldn't have been looking at. She didn't even buy the cover. That's not even the cover you use for your book, I'm assuming. No, it's not. This is why we don't hang around in pre-made cover groups. I know Jennifer does that because she's like, look at this. I don't have a book for this, but I want to. Like, focus on what you're supposed to do. It's like the author version of keep your eyes on your own plate.
I bought a pre-made cover for a book that is not finished yet, and it is the most beautiful cover, and I cannot wait to finish that book just so I can share the cover with the world because it's gorgeous.
Is it in one of the series you're writing now?
No, it's a standalone.
Oh, of course not. It's completely different. So we're gonna have to wait like another 2, 5, 17 years to get this book.
To be fair, I started writing that book before I started writing Courting the Dragon, so it's actually older than anything we're talking about other than Saving the Dragon.
Jennifer said it worked out for you once. Which cover? For Pretty Ugly? I don't know. You'll have to answer that later. I'm like, I don't know which one of yours was the first pre-made cover. One of them has her on it, just with her head and her tattoos photoshopped out. I won't say which one. That's fine. But no, I mean, I want to be able to have us eventually get to those things. And I don't know what order you're writing things in. If you end up writing Bared Magic when you were supposed to be writing one of the Saving the Dragon books. So there you go.
So I wrote Bared Magic in about 6 weeks. Obviously editing and revising took longer, but the first draft was written in 6 weeks. Right now I am finishing Finding the Dragon. It was supposed to come out last year and some things happened and that did not happen.
Life occurs.
So I'm finishing that and I'm simultaneously writing Cursed Magic. And my goal is to have at least one of them out this year.
Some book out. Well, I mean, I know for me, I need to go back and finish the Dragon series because when we're like, I want to have you on my show, I've already read one of your books. Oh, I should probably read the other books too. And I'd only read one of them, but you read on audio, which you're like, that may be not the best way of reading it. But for me, if I don't have it in my ears, I don't have time to get to it. Like I'm still trying to finish the book for tomorrow's show, which on Vox Vomitus, we have Ed Amar's No Home for Killers, which is paperback, which means I have to use the eyeballs and they're just not as fast as my ears that can also be doing dishes and driving and all that kind of stuff. So I want to get to the rest of your series, but I also know that you've still not finished the book that I started reading first for you, and I would like to have that eventually. I don't have to bribe you or send you things somehow to get the rest of the story. I don't know. Do you respond to bribes well? Don't answer that. It's fine. Don't answer. Also, Jennifer's jealous of how fast you finish this. 6 weeks. OMG, amazing. Oh, and Jack says there is a Melinda on days right now who is also annoying. We apologize to any real life Melindas who we have just ruined your character and your reputation. It is not based on any real Melindas. There's just something evil about your name, and I'm sorry. None of my children are named Melinda. I'm just saying that now.
So here's the thing with my writing process. I wrote Saving in about 4 weeks. It was a NaNoWriMo. Courting the Dragon took me 6 years.
So, okay, you and I are like, we're simpatico here. There are books that come out like whipped cream, done. And then there are others that are churning butter that you're going to be churning butter for the next freaking decade. And there is no comparison even in the quality of the book. It's just for whatever reason, some books are like, thank you, here I am, I'm done. And they just show up fully formed, like, what is it? Athena stepping out of Zeus's head. I get my mythology messed up. And then others, you just are pulling teeth and it's like herding cats and the storyline's going everywhere. Or sometimes you just stare at the computer going, maybe I should do some words. Oh, let me look up gems instead for the name of this character for 3 hours. That's
I
me.
think it's actually, for me, I think it's first book versus second book in a series.
Mm,
First books are very easy because I'm doing, discovery writing, and I am discovering everything about the world and everything about the characters, and it's just coming out. Whereas the second book, there's now rules I have to follow
yeah.
because I laid them out in the first book. I usually have more of an idea of what the plot must be in order
Mm.
to fill out the series. And as soon as you do anything that remotely resembles an outline, my brain goes, no, thank you. We're done here. Goodbye. And then
Same.
just walks out the door.
Yeah.
So, Courting the Dragon, I had outlined completely. I had like a whole proper outline. The book that you will read is not the outline that I wrote.
No, what the outline was this thing that probably was getting in the way of you actually writing the book. Like
Yes.
each little thing is a hurdle, and you're like, my brain doesn't want to do that. No,
Yeah.
and we can stop.
And I threw out 1 to 2/3 of the draft on 2 or 3 separate occasions for that book. So
You just threw it out. You didn't put it in a save file somewhere. Okay, Jennifer, you don't know what a proper outline is. You've never done one. You never will. That's not your thing, and it's okay. I've only ever outlined. When I've outlined, it was on an R&R that I was doing for an editor, and they wanted me to revise the first 100 pages and then an outline of the rest. And I laughed and went, "What's an outline?" And I knew what an outline was because I was a good student, so I knew how to outline for notes, but not for a book that hadn't been written. I found the best way to do that was to actually just make all the changes and then put it back in outline form. So sure, I can outline after the book's done.
Yeah. I in some cases I did save it, but in other cases I knew that I was going in such a different direction that there was no way that text was ever going to fit back in.
Yeah.
And I just removed it. But I do typically, my Scrivener, I will have my manuscript, but there will be another folder that is called holding bin. And that's where I just shove the stuff that either I had to take out or I don't know where it's going to go yet in the manuscript, or just junk. So I always have manuscript, holding bin, and then notes. And the notes are not organized. They are not a world Bible. They are typically one file with a bullet point of just things I want to remember, and then maybe another file with the blurb, because I now write my blurbs first.
Okay, that's actually really smart. And we've talked to people who say they write their blurbs first, or they even write their synopsis first, and the synopsis ends up being kind of like an outline. And Jack says he writes an outline and then proceeds to ignore it. And then unless he's completely stuck and need a reminder of where you were going. Yeah, Jack, you need a road map sometimes to go, where was I? How lost did I get? But I understand. So you're using Scrivener, so you have those abilities to do that. I work in Word, so I'm just like labeling random documents and trying to remember where I shove them, which is really fun when your computer dies and you're moving things over and you're like, I know I saved it. And then you got to go check the little stick that still has some of the documents on it. I'm like, I know I have that. Don't I have that? I hope I have that.
I don't throw away my old computer hard drives.
I don't either. It's just hard if they aren't functioning to get them back.
Somewhere in this house, I still have my laptop hard drive from high school.
See, this is just where I feel old that you had a laptop in high school, because I didn't have one till law school, and even then I was mostly just playing games on it. But yeah, no, I didn't have a laptop in high school. I don't even know if they had laptops when I was in high school. I'm sure they did. I didn't have one. But yeah, I mean, those are important things to keep. And then if you want to be able to go back and get them, that's great, so long as they still are functioning. And we have a lot of computers around here that they're not functioning. And if I needed to get something out, I would need to take them to the Nerd Squad and say, can you do a seance and resurrect the documents?
I had to go through a bunch of documents and save them in Word format because they were written in WordPerfect.
Mm-hmm.
So
WordPerfect. Does WordPerfect even exist anymore, or is it the beta of? And I don't mean beta reading. I mean like beta max of the formats. I don't know how to open a WordPerfect anymore.
I don't know if WordPerfect still exists anymore or not. I mean, nowadays, I do save a lot of things in like docx file format for other people, but if I'm not in Scrivener, I'm in Apple Pages, and I actually like Apple Pages. And
I don't even know what Apple Pages is.
It is Apple's default word processor that comes installed on a Mac. I really like Apple Pages. I don't hear anybody ever talk about
I didn't
pages
think
like
it was a thing. That's why.
ever. But I love Apple Pages. So if I'm writing a short story, typically I'm writing it in Apple Pages.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm fixing my formatting output from Scrivener, I'm doing it in Apple Pages. Like all my drop caps and stuff, I do that in Apple Pages. And I really like it. It's actually really compatible with Word in terms of like if you're going in, you're leaving comments and notation, doing like beta feedback and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It works with, it's compatible with Word for that and all that, but it runs 1,000 times better on my Mac than the Microsoft Office suite does. So.
Well, but you're also using Mac, and if people can't tell if they had read the show notes, Sarah is a computer person, and these words make sense to her. And for me, I'm like, I only understand about half of this stuff. And Jack says he had an Apple 2GS desktop in the computer lab, so he's going with no, because Jack and I are the same age. So in terms of, hey, what kind of computers do we have back then? The kind that played Oregon Trail in the classroom. Yay, world.
We had those. We had iMacs, I remember, in our elementary school classrooms.
Were those the ones that looked like they were plastic and were really brightly colored?
Yeah, and they like, and they kind of looked like a CRTV monitor because it was the monitor and the computer
all in one.
And that was like my first experience with Mac. I did not own a Mac as an adult until probably about like 5-6 years ago ish. Maybe.
You prefer Mac now?
I do. I bought it because I was sick of going over to my sister's computer to use iTunes Producer to fix my stuff.
Yeah.
In the Apple bookstore.
So I get it. These aren't always compatible with different things, and you've got to have multiple machines to make everything work. And then you're just like, can't one thing just do everything? And the answer is no.
It's like a $300 Mac Mini used from somebody, and I loved it so much that I bought a brand new one last year or year before. I don't know, but I'm like, everything at home now is Mac. I work in a Microsoft thing. Like I work in for people who know what this means, I work in a .NET shop. So I deal with Microsoft, this, that, all day, every day at work. That is enough Microsoft for me.
I've got enough of that. Now I need to back away. I need to Microsoft detox. Well, and for people, there might be people watching this who are part of our indie author book club chat. And Sarah is always the one who will come in on anything technical, especially if things aren't displaying correctly. Where are all my pictures on Twitter, cropping people's faces off, stuff like that? Sarah always knows. So if you've got technical problems, ask Sarah. And then Sarah's like, don't ask me. I've got enough to do. But she's usually the one who knows these kind of things. So I trust your technical judgment on all these, on what works and what doesn't. And I will often see people ask on Twitter, well, what do you use? Do you use Scrivener? Do you use Word? Do you use Google Docs? I personally hate Google Docs, mostly just because I don't like somebody else editing a document while I'm trying to read it. And I've had that happen where I'm betaing for somebody and someone else is like actively typing, I don't like this part. And I'm going, can I just read the book and not have it change on me? The words are moving around like magic.
I hate using Google Docs for beta reading. Not when I'm the beta reader, but when I'm the author. So many people request it in Google Docs. And the reason I hate it is I do not want to see your comments as you're making them. Please.
That makes me crazy.
And Google insists on emailing me, every.
Oh, it tells you.
So. Yeah.
Okay, see, I'm doing it as a beta. I don't know what it's like as an author because whenever I do it, I don't do it that way. And when I do my beta reads, I prefer to have a separate Word doc where I just say stuff and it lets me say, hey, on this page, about halfway down, this is what you're saying. I think you might mean this, etc. Or this isn't working for me and here's why, rather than the line by line and have to jump down to comments. And I've had people send me docs because they insist on doing it in Google Docs. And then I can't find the comments because they forgot to turn them on or something. It's just, it makes me a bit crazy, but I didn't know it would do that. That's an extra reason.
There's
probably a setting. Sorry, Jack, you can love Google Docs. I still don't.
There's probably a setting I could change in Google Docs. I also remember Google Docs years ago when I was writing Saving the Dragon, where when you got to about 25,000 words, Google Docs would just like start to die. Like scrolling was hard. It's way better now because technology changes, all that. But Google Docs back in the day, it was meant for like students writing a term paper. It wasn't meant for people writing 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 150,000 word novels. It's just not what the original use case was.
Well, so I think it's working better now, and I know some people who prefer it, but I know for me, it's one of those things. I'm also very set in my ways that if I have a bad experience with something first time off, I'm like, I'm never using it again. And then people are going, well, but this is what I need you to use. I'm like, fine, I'll use it. But that's just how I am.
My thing with Google Docs too is when I'm beta reading for somebody, I prefer to have my own copy so that I can take whatever notes I want and be as scathing and judgmental as I want for the first round of notes, and then go back and go through my notes and make them polite and helpful and useful, and like depending on the person, because there are some people that I'm like, you can have my unfiltered thoughts, here you go. But there are other people where I'm like, I know that I can come across as harsher than I mean to, so I need to go back through these and make them more
and then she comes back and sugarcoats. Here's me with my little brushed on syrup.
Just
nicer now.
There's I just Google Docs doesn't give you that opportunity, because they could be sitting there watching you put in your notes, and so
it's like they're sitting right behind you going and that's enough to make anybody crazy. And I understand. I do have friends who like it, partially because some of them are working from their phone. Or they're working from a computer that is like a Chromebook that only has that. And I will say, not this computer, but the computer before. My husband got me a Chromebook, and I'm like, where's Word? He's like, well, it doesn't have Word. And I just like, take this back, please. Because I'm like, I didn't need it to do that. He's like, oh, I thought you could use Google Docs. And I said, no, I will not be doing that. I need Word. Thank you very much.
I've also seen Google Docs go way off the rails when someone will send the same Google Doc to all of their betas. And so everybody's in the same document.
Yep. I've had that.
And I've seen that go off the rails in a couple of different ways. And
comment fight.
Comment fight, or what it ends up feeling like everybody's ganging up on the author about a particular thing, or the betas are influencing each other's opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are going to use Google Docs
as an author,
if you are going to use Google Docs, I highly recommend that you copy and put everybody's name on each one, and then share them individually.
Yes. Google for Allison, Google for Sarah, Google for Jack. Yeah. Jen is not going to beta read, so don't bother sending it to her. But point being, don't have everybody on there. And I can see that because I do know that sometimes I will get beta feedback and I will be like, do other people see this, or is it just one outlier? Do I need to address it or not? And that doesn't give you the opportunity to see if anybody else comes across it. And that's one of the reasons I will use a beta questionnaire sometimes when I remember to get across with that, but that I will add early feedback into the beta questionnaire to say, hey, did you see this? So-and-so spotted this. And then some of them will be like, no, and I don't get that. Where did they come up with that? Or they'll go, oh, you know what? Now that you mention it, I do. But if you plant the idea first, you don't let them have the honest reaction to the text, which is what you're looking for. And yes, once the book is out in the wild, you do have readers influencing each other because they do talk. I mean, like even in our indie author book club, people will be like, oh, did you get this far in the book? Oh, this is how many tissues I'm going through. That's you with this book this month. Yes, we are reading Ladybirds and people are crying. So there's that. But it is one of those things where you will influence each other and you can't help it. People influence each other. But if you want beta feedback, you want it to be clear, you know? You don't want it influenced by Sarah going, more tissues. I'm so sad. This is not warm and fuzzy.
Listen, this was sold to me as that this month's book club book was sold to me as a romance.
It's not a romance.
And all I got was traumatized for the first half.
I know.
It's a beautiful book. It is.
Listen, I'm enjoying it.
If you like being traumatized, like if sobbing into your book is a thing you enjoy, because that's a thing that some people enjoy.
Hey, it's cathartic. It's cathartic. Not everybody always wants warm and fuzzy, and that's the thing. And I will say, as far as romance goes, it does require a certain amount of happily ever after. But if the whole thing is kind of a downer till we get there, I don't know if most people would still pick that as a romance, even if it might technically qualify under, hey, there was a happily ever after. It's like, yeah, after everybody got done getting stabbed in the face and all that stuff. That doesn't happen in this book. I'm just giving a really big example, a silly one. But I understand. I understand what you're saying. And I would say for betas, the whole point of having betas is to get that unbiased feedback. And sometimes that's really hard to get because either people are trying to be really too nice, or you aren't getting the kind of feedback that really helps because people don't know the genre well enough, or they don't really understand what the conventions are within the genre, or they're being influenced because there's a comment war and people are like, let's gang up on the author, or I just agree with everything this person says. They're smart. I want to agree with them. And that's not helpful either. It doesn't help. But I know, Sarah, you also do book reviews for people, and I've seen you've got like almost like a format for it. And as an author, that's scary. So I'm like, don't ever review my books that way. No, I'm kidding. But you're very pragmatic because you break it down, and I'm sure you also know this from being an author yourself and approaching it that way. That it's not just, well, did I enjoy the story or not? But you talk about everything from pacing to the prose itself to the structure. And I would say in our group, you're one of the people who really does find these things in the book, and other people I think are much more, I want to say, holistic, where they just are like, did I enjoy it? Yes or no? And I think you really break it down. And I don't know if that comes from your coding brain where you have to break things down, or because the gaming background where you're like, I've got to break it down by mechanics. And did this character have roll for initiative? No, they didn't get it. Where does that come from? Do you think that's just intrinsic in you, or is that something because you've done more reviews, or where does that come from?
So when I first started doing reviews, my plan was to do them on YouTube. And there are 3 or 4 of my reviews still up on YouTube.
Everybody go Google that now. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
And so I was trying to like make a show format, really, is what I was going for with that.
Like different segments?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
So it kind of evolved out of that. I do, but I almost, it's more like, it was inspired kind of by like the rubrics that some of my English teachers would use in school, because, and I don't do a lot of blog reviews anymore, but when I do them now, it's because I can't decide just based on feeling how I should rate a book. And there may be some things that are warring about how should I rate this. And a lot of times I will do my review that way and use that rubric to, figure out how I should rate a book, because maybe I really love the prose, but it's not a genre I like. And like, how much of that is my genre bias versus like, you know, an actual problem with the book. And a lot of times I'll use that rubric to help me get over my own biases about something, to determine what a fair review of the book is. Because there are times I've read books where I'm just like, I really hated this book, and if I was just going on my feelings, I would rate this book a 2 probably. But there's nothing technically wrong with the book, and someone who loves that genre would probably really enjoy the book. There's been cases like that, or there's been cases where I've read books that had a lot of formatting issues, and it made it hard to read the book. But is that enough to really completely detract from all the good things in the book? So I use that as a rubric to help keep myself as objective as it's possible to be in something as subjective as a book review.
Well, and I appreciate that you do that. And you point out the formatting thing. And we read one a few months ago. I don't remember the name of the book, but there was one where huge chunks of text were in italics to show like a different time period. And how many of us had just issues just with our eye strain, that's something that's like, well, that's not the prose, that's not the story, but the author made the deliberate choice to do that. That made it harder for the reader to be able to enjoy. And that would be something that would be different, say, for example, if someone was listening to it on audio, because it wouldn't even translate from that to that. Like, I know I read a book, and it wasn't one from one of our group. I read it on my own, and I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't until I went and read the reviews that I didn't know, because I'd listened to it, the author chose not to use quotations anywhere. So the whole thing was written with like dialogue, but as I was listening to it, I didn't know that. And that's a really kind of jarring choice that a lot of people would be like, I hate this. Why would you do this? It made it harder for me to read and understand. But having a narrator read it to me means I wasn't even aware of that. So I like that you do that. So you kind of parse it out. Like, here's why it's like this. And that you also take that genre bias aside. Because I do know people who are like, I hated this. Well, why did you ever pick it up in the first place? Especially if it's something where it's a book group where maybe you didn't choose to pick it up. you just went with whatever the book group and you didn't want to miss out that week because FOMO is the thing. And we are like, we don't want to miss the book. So we read it regardless of whether or not it would have been our choice. And sometimes that we get to read things that we wouldn't have ever picked that are amazing, which is why you do groups like that. And other times you go, I still didn't like it. Why'd you make me do this? Because it's fun.
I will say that the thing about book club is that it's taught me how to DNF because
DNF, for those people who don't know what it means, did not finish.
I am a bit of a completionist and I don't like to not finish a book. And now it might be that it takes me a year to read something. And there have been books where it's legitimately taken me a year to read them because I just wasn't that into them.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like intentionally DNFing and saying, no, I'm never going to finish this book. There's a difference to me between putting a book down and walking away from it and putting a book down saying, no,
nope,
never. And book club has actually taught me how to DNF because we do, because it is by like popular vote or however we do it, which kind of changes.
It changes. Is it thumb wrestling? Sometimes it's, blind pull out of the hat. I don't know. It changes every month. It gets confusing.
And I've been exposed to genres that I probably would not have picked up because of book club. But I've also, like, there have been several books that we've read where I'm just like, you know what? I'm not into this. It's not worth my time, my energy. And I'll just show up and everybody will tell me what the ending was. And I don't need to put my energy into finding that out for myself. And then we can talk about, and sometimes it's like, it's just not my thing. Sometimes it's like the whole italic situation where I'm just like, no,
my brain just shut down. Yeah.
But that's actually been one of the really great things is book club has helped me learn to DNF, and it's also helped me learn to deal with my genre biases and things like that. I'm still mad at everybody about this month's book. Don't get me wrong, but
and it's funny because I know it wasn't one I voted for because the book that we have next month, I was the one who nominated that one. So I will already take anybody being mad at that one. But I was very clear at what it was, even if Amazon isn't always clear at what it was, that it isn't a happy, happy, joy, joy book. And I think sometimes that is the thing is if people are like, I'm a mood reader and I need something that's uplifting. And I think we were all told, oh, it's February, love and romance. And it's like, wait, we never said this was a rom-com. And, there's a big line between tragic that ultimately has a happy ending and rom-com. There's a lot of gray area in there, or pink area, pink and red and fuzzy. Maybe some chocolate.
I can be a mood reader, definitely. One of the things I'm doing this year is I've determined I'm going to read 100 books. They're not all indie this year. I am reading some trad pop, but I have gamified this for myself. So
you gamified it how? Do we level up each time, or we roll from the next book on the line, or how do we get that gamified?
So if there's one thing that really motivates me, it's boxes changing color on spreadsheets.
I love that's amazing.
I have my whip spreadsheet set up in such a way that when I change the word count, the box will go from like orange to yellow to like light green to like green for being.
It's like Mario eating the mushroom and it gets bigger.
And like that motivates me. So for my reading list this year, I have spread out the months and I have assigned a theme to every month. And I have enough things in my TBR that I can fill out these themes.
Yeah, because your TBR is frightening. Yeah.
I have a mandatory indie book. I have a mandatory indie sequel. I have the book club book. I have a trad book, something in audio, and then my my religion and history section, and then I have the rest of my theme books. And I have to get 8 a month. But the way that I have it is I have them color coded, so they're one color for I haven't bought it yet. There's a different color for it's in the mail. There's a color for it's on my bookshelf.
In the mail. See, and I'm picturing it like good old Trivial Pursuit, like the pie, and you get to fill out the pie. I got my full pie this month. Yay! I can go back towards the center and answer my question. I love that. That cracks me up so much. And I love that you're doing all that. And I know for me, because I've been doing this show and Vox Vomitus, this one for about 1.5 years and Vox Vomitus for 2.5 years, it's been something where my reading list is basically what do we have going on for the shows. And then once I started doing the indie book club, I added that in, but I'm also usually beta reading for somebody or reading somebody's book that came out, and that kind of has guided it so that the things that I want, like, oh, I just wanted to read this for no other reason, those are always the last on, whether or not if it shows up on Cloud Library pushes it to the top, because whatever I can listen to, most of those other things are often not things I can listen to. So my eyeball time being as limited as it is, it's like, if it's in my ears, it gets up top.
Yeah, audio is really helping me get through more of the things that I want to read.
Mm-hmm.
And audio is a struggle for me because I will, if there's anything else my brain can be engaged in, I will just 20 minutes to go by and I'll have no idea what I just heard. So I have to be like doing dishes or crocheting or doing something very not thought intensive in order to really listen. But I listened to all of the Murderbot Diaries on audio last month.
So that was 2 hours. They're short. I'm joking. I don't know how long they are total, but I know that I read the first one and it was very, very short. I'm like, oh,
Network Effect is a full novel. It's not a novella. It's like 10 hours. But yeah, I listened to all of those last month, and then this month I've already gotten through a couple of books because they were audio.
Audio for the win.
But yeah, they're getting to mark them blue on my spreadsheet is just.
Well, and I know that we were talking a couple days ago about a book that's set possibly just outside of your historical period of interest. What is your historical period of interest again? What are the years?
I really am particularly interested in 400 AD through about 1066 AD.
Okay, so if anybody have so if anybody has historical fiction set in that time, message the show and we'll make sure Sarah gets that on her TBR to fill out her little pie and her little Trivial Pursuit thing, color code.
So I can be upset.
yes, so you can read all that. We put it on your list. It'll be good. But Sarah, we're out of time. I love getting to talk to you. You're amazing. Your books are amazing. Your crazy spreadsheets are amazing. Your color changes are amazing. If anybody wants to have like a tutorial, I'm sure Sarah will give it on how to create these amazing spreadsheets. If your TBR is out of control, Sarah will gamify it for you and show you all this for the low price of $40 an hour. So I don't know if that's your billable rate. I just pulled that out of the air and just went, ta-da. Thank you, Sarah. Her website has been scrolling across the bottom, but if you're just listening to this, it's www.sarah-cleveland without the A.com. So you can find it. And she's always on Twitter, like constantly on Twitter. I think she lives there because that's where I usually find her, to be able to chat with her or reach out or find those lovely books and retweet her tweets. And we will see you guys next time. We'll see everyone on Vox Vomitus tomorrow with Ed Amar with No Home for Killers, and I'll be back next month on To the Moon Allison, hopefully sometime in March, with James Rollins with his next in his, it should be Cradle of Ice, which is the next in his series that followed the Starless Crown. So thank you, everyone. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel, the Vox Vomitus channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.